MrTransformers96 here with another video review. This time we have the Captain America Civil War Diecast Hot Toys War Machine figure. So this is a figure that I've been anticipating for a long time. I've always wanted a War Machine in my collection. However, I've struggled with deciding which of his marks to get, and I finally did decide to go with the Mark III from Civil War. It is here now. I'm very excited, so let's get on to the figure. Here's War Machine out of package, but before we get into the figure, let's go over his accessories. You get a fair selection of hands with this figure. You of course get a pair of fists, a pair of articulated palms, and a pair of repulsor blasting palms, and then the kind of new hands that you get are these two, which are the fists, but they also have this top piece that's extended. He uses this as kind of like a sonic weapon when he stops Scarlet Witch from holding up the building and she has to drop it. So that it's nice that he does come with that piece to represent that function of the armor. Personally, I don't really use it for that. I don't use them as weapons, but I do actually display him with those sonic fists because they're bulkier, and I like him with the bulky weapons on his arms. So the bulkier hands just kind of help fill out the lower section of the arms completely, so that it doesn't look like his forearms are just massive and then he has small hands. So basically that's what I use them for, just to kind of give him some more bulk in the arm area. This selection of hands, though, is pretty standard, with a few exceptions, of course, and it's a pretty nice selection of them. The only thing I could have really wanted is maybe a saluting hand. I know that he doesn't salute in Civil War, however, War Machine has saluted in other films past, in, Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, and usually his figures come with saluting hands, so it would have just been nice to have that, just for a little bit of variety, but it's certainly not necessary. He does come with all the hands that you really need. You get the standard Civil War base with this figure. As you can see, it does have the Civil War logo and the arc reactor in the background with the red details, since obviously War Machine is a part of Team Iron Man. The nameplate up front has a little symbol that kind of represents War Machine right there, and then has the logo again, as well as his name. Then he just has like a normal kind of cradle piece. Wish that was different. This is a diecast figure, and he comes with just a standard base, which is a shame. It would have been nice if he came with something a little bit more elaborate. However, I do like the fact that his base is unified with the rest of the series, but if they were going to do this base, what would have been nice is to give it a different way of holding him, to have like a little screw area with a metal pole and just one of those cradle pieces that they usually give for Hot Toys figures. Would have been really nice, because this base really doesn't offer any support. This thing is just like, it's not long enough to actually support him in the slightest. So it's there, mainly just for looks. Wish that this actually was supportive with diecast figures. This figure is very stable on his own. He's very heavy in the legs section, so he already is stable because of that. And he's has rather large feet and everything, so he's very stable by himself. But it's a shame that the base doesn't offer any of that stability. He does come with an interchangeable battle damage chest. The battle damage and the regular chest piece, they're both just plastic and not die-cast, which is unfortunate. However, the battle damage piece here, it looks pretty nice. As far as the sculpting goes, I do like the way that it's been sculpted. It's obviously to represent the beam from Vision, which takes him out of the sky, and paralyzes him at the end of the movie. So that's obviously what this piece of damage is supposed to represent. And sculpted nicely, I think that is pretty good. Nothing spectacular. It looks a bit cheap. But from certain angles it looks quite good. My issue with it is the paint is really odd. Like, they have a tan and then like a bright blue. I don't particularly remember ever getting a good look at it in the movie. However, these colors together just look odd. I don't know why they'd go with these colors. I think there's something a little more natural, and just maybe some silver would have been better than this. But then, the bright blue and kind of yellowish just looks really odd. So although I like the fact that he has this battle damage chest piece, it's not done particularly well, which is unfortunate. But I do like the fact that it's very visible. It's very noticeable as battle damage itself. He comes with this new accessory that's really just for the Mark III, which is his baton. The baton is quite nice. Obviously, this is a very different design from what we originally saw in the prototype images. They did, of course, we're just going off of like concept art, I believe, and therefore the baton was changed in the final film, and they did have to redo this baton piece. So I am glad they did that, and they didn't just give us the inaccurate one, basically. But overall, it looks pretty nice. It does have a light up function, so you can just flip this down. It's a little hard to get to, and it's got such a small little thing that you actually flip down, but it is nice that you can do it. And then if we move the lights out of the way a bit, you can get a bit of a better look at the lights here. They're brighter the closer they are to the insides, and then this middle section is a bit faded a bit. You know, it doesn't light up completely. But overall, it's nice that he comes with that, and it's very cool that it does light up. Let's show you how he holds it. So unfortunately, he doesn't hold it very well. The only way that you can have him hold it is via the articulated fingers. Really wish that he came with hands that were specifically sculpted to hold this thing, because otherwise he doesn't, you know, hold it extremely sturdy. As you can see, it's kind of falling out of his hands there a bit. It's hard to wrap his fingers around it completely and get it perfect. So very annoying, and it's something that could have been fixed really easily. So it is definitely such a shame to see that they didn't, you know, do this the right way. Really definitely needs hands to hold the baton. So his arms do have some interchangeable pieces. Right now, as you can see, he doesn't have the extended weapons on at all. These are just his kind of flat, plain, you know, standard arms there. But you can replace the top panel as well as the bottom panel to provide some different looks. So here it is with the top section changed out for the extended weapon. I think that this is my favorite look, actually. I think that the weapon at the bottom is cool, but it does look a little off. This allows him to keep his cool slick look with also having a nice weapon there, and it does, you know, create some bulk for the arm, which is great as well. So I think it looks great, and I'm very happy that it does include it, and I'm very happy that it's easy to switch out and that it doesn't look too absurd. You know, sometimes with like interchangeable weapon accessory arms and things like that, they can look a little ridiculous, so you can't really display them like that unless you have them in a pose. This way you can display him just kind of standing there with these weapons popped out, and he still looks great. You don't need him to be in a pose for these weapon arms to look good. And here's both weapons fully extended. This does look quite nice, and it looks excellent when he's in poses where he's shooting. However, with that bottom piece, it does kind of break the slick look of the armor in general. So I would really only display him like this when he is in poses of shooting. But if you want him still with the weapon showing, but still having that slick look, then just do the top and don't do the bottom. And then for me personally, I don't really like the non-extended pieces. I think that with the extended pieces, or at least one of the extended pieces, it gives him more bulk and makes him look a little bit more menacing. So I would always display him with at least one of these pieces out because it's very cool. He has a few pop-out kind of weapon pieces on his shoulders and collarbones. As you can see, here he is without the weapons popped out and with his back shoulder cannon positioned in a, you know, kind of relaxed position. So now let's kind of like pop out a few of the weapons. Two that he has are these kind of missile kind of launchers, which these flip up and you just magnetically put them right there. The only issue is I cannot get those things to flip up. There's no place to like grab them to flip them up, and one of these days I'm gonna really have to sit down and get them open, but for right now I really can't get them open. Personally, I wouldn't display them like that anyway though, so I don't really need to do it, but it is nice that he does have the function to do it. Here he is with the weapons flipped up. As you can see here, you just take off that little panel on this side and then just pop in this piece, which is kind of his rocket launchers. They look quite neat. Nothing too extravagant here though, and unfortunately they don't swivel or anything. You know, it would have been nice if they at least swiveled, but they don't. So they are always pointed forward. It would have been nice if you could swivel them out so that they're pointed in the parallel direction of his cannon. That would be nice, but unfortunately you can't do that. His cannon though is the more interesting of the two. The cannon obviously looks very cool. It's kind of in between the cannon from Age of Ultron and Iron Patriot and then the Mark I. The Mark I, I do prefer the more realistic Gatling gun. I think that just looks cooler. It's longer too. It's more aggressive looking. You have the ammo pack out of it. This one is more futuristic, more slick, which, you know, I could see some people being attracted to, but for me personally, I don't prefer it. However, it's definitely better than the Age of Ultron and Iron Patriot one. But overall, it does look nice. It is on multiple points of articulation. It swivels at the base as well as has a hinge at the base. It has a hinge up here as well, and then it also swivels right here too. So it has a nice range of articulation. Would have been nice if it could even have a few more joints to really get some cool poses and to really go very extravagant with it, because you really can't get it to point like this way, you know. There's no way to do it other than like this, and it still looks very awkward, especially since this little piece cannot swivel 360 completely. So, you know, a few extra pieces of articulation on the Canon would have allowed it to do some very cool things, but at the moment it does still have a nice range to it, and it is of course very intimidating and very distinct to War Machine, which I definitely like a lot. So going over a few of the light up functions, as you can see we have his eyes and his arc reactor lit up. I'm not a huge fan of these, I have to say. Like from this, in this lighting it looks pretty good, having just the low lights on him and allowing, you know, just the lights on him to illuminate parts of his body up top. Looks neat. However, just the coloring of the lights I'm not big on. It's very pinkish and purplish at the top. His eyes are more of this kind of, I'd say like a bit of a pink, and then the chest is more of like a light purple, and it just looks really strange. I know in the movie he does have a similar color to that, but it's more red, and it really just outlines the areas, and then the middle section is white. Now, you know, on camera it does kind of come out that way, however in person you really don't see it, especially in the eyes. The eyes don't really have any white in them, it just seems like they're completely pink, and then the arc reactor, it is more colorful towards the outline of the reactor itself, and then the inside is a bit more white, but still it's quite purplish, you know, it just looks very odd. I'm not a big fan of these colors. I don't think that they're quite accurate, and in general I wish that they had more of a reddish tone to them, and again I wish that they were more just only outlining the pieces and not filling them all in with the color, which is unfortunately. Going over the head sculpt, before we talk about the Don Cheadle one, first, his helmet looks very nice. I do definitely like it. It's very aggressive. This was one thing that I did enjoy more about this Mark than the Mark 1. The Mark 1 has a very just clean faceplate, which I didn't prefer. I do like the look of it with more lines. It looks more aggressive, and I think that the aggressive look is more of War Machine's look, which I do like. So I like this helmet quite a lot. He comes with two helmets. One is obviously just for the lights, and then one does reveal the face underneath. You just hinge that piece down, you can pop out the faceplate and then just magnetically position it there, and then here's his face. With his body so bulky, and if I pan out you'd be able to see it, but because his body is so bulky, his face underneath looks a bit small, at least to me. It just looks a bit small. Like, you see just how bulky he is? He's got like this small face in this extremely bulky armor. So one thing that does help it, I found, is that if you don't leave this jaw area down, if you kind of position it up, that way you really can't see the outline of his face, and therefore he doesn't look as puny in such a big armor. The face sculpt itself is alright. It definitely is more detailed than the original War Machine from what I've seen from pictures. This is my only War Machine though, so I can't compare it directly. But from what I've seen, it does seem to be quite an improvement. I'm not a big fan of the expression, wish that there was a little bit more going on there, and it's not perfect, you know, it does seem like there is a lack of detail still, which is unfortunate. I would say that it's one of Hot Toys' weaker head sculpts. However, it's obviously in a helmet, so, you know, most of the time you're not going to be displaying it with it. You know, I do think that the head sculpt is disappointing. However, you know, you don't have to have it displayed, which is nice. So it's disappointing, but it's not horrible, I will say. And then it's easy to just close up, and you can obviously give the helmet some expression. You know, that could work for some funny pictures. So yeah, that is neat. The ball joint, make sure that gets in there. There you go. It doesn't really pop into place. You just kind of have to push it in until it feels like it kind of locks in, which is nice. Going over the rest of the armor is very bulky, like I stated. The shoulder pads are quite nice. They're not on any sort of spring area, which is great. They're on a hinge at the actual shoulder, and then the peg that goes into the pad is on a ball joint, so you can definitely get a lot of range with that, which is great. And you can allow it to always be positioned against his arm so that you fill in the shoulder. There's never any gaps in the shoulders, which is great. That's something that was a huge problem for the Mark III. 3, so I am very pleased that they did fix that. He does have little pieces of scratches all over him, which is nice. Gives him that bit of a damaged look. However, he still does look pretty clean. And then he does have some kind of Air Force logos all over him, which is kind of nice, and some warning signs and things like that. He also has this, I don't remember this in the movie, I'm sure it was there though, but they're like little Ultron heads. So did he like count how many Ultron drones he killed and then got that printed onto his new suit? I think that's just a little odd. Maybe it's just a nice way to show how proud he was about it, and now he has like a story of his own, which was a big deal in Age of Ultron, so that would be kind of funny if that's kind of the background to why he has that there. But overall, it's kind of neat. As we go down, you've obviously seen the forearms, and then the legs themselves are very nice. They're very bulky, just like all of the diecast figures. His legs house the majority of the diecast. He doesn't have much diecast on him. For such a bulky armor, he doesn't weigh that much. He's still heavy, but compared to some of my other armors, it does feel like he uses less diecast, even though he is bulkier. But the legs do house the majority of the diecast. Unfortunately, the clean chest plate is not diecast, which usually it is. I mean, like with Whiplash, the clean chest plate was diecast, and then the more detailed destroyed one was plastic. With this guy, both of his chest plates are plastic, which is so disappointing. For me personally, diecast is neat, but it's certainly not worth it. I would much rather pay less and get a plastic figure. It makes it easier to pose them too, because you're not worried about them being outweighted, and as well as the fact that when you lift up like his legs or something, you'd be worried that that the diecast heaviness of it would just wear down the joint, which is definitely a shame. So I'm not a fan of diecast. I'd much prefer plastic rather than the diecast. But that's just me. As you can see, his shoulder pads do stick out quite far, and on the back does look quite good. I was worried when I saw reviews of this guy when they compared him with the Mark I, because I struggled with whether to get the Mark I or the Mark III for the longest time, and I really like the bulky, big War Machine figures. So when they compared them in their reviews, I was really disappointed because it looked like this Mark III was not very bulky from a comparative when you compare it to the Mark I, which was very dissatisfying to me. Luckily, getting it in person without being able to physically compare it to the Mark I don't see him as not bulky. He looks very bulky to me, so I'm sure that the Mark I is much bulkier. However, if you don't have the Mark I, this one will still feel very, very bulky for you. So if you're like me, you want a bulky War Machine, and you're trying to decide between those two marks, this one is going to be great for you as a bulky look. I personally still like the Mark I quite a lot, and I am very pleased with my choice in the Mark III. However, there's a part of me that does want the Mark I for different reasons. So I'm very happy with this armor. I think it's a great mark for War Machine. However, I do see some pluses from the Mark I as well. Alright, going over his articulation, it's pretty excellent. It is relatively standard from what we've seen with diecast figures, but there are actually a couple new pieces, which is nice. First of all, the head works very nicely. He can look down, you know, decent amount there. He can look up pretty far amount, and the way that the joints constructed as far as the neck's constructed as far as the joints go is he's a ball joint at the top of his head. That ball joint is connected to a hinge at the top of the neck, and then at the bottom of the neck he has another ball joint. So you basically have joints in 3 different places there, which can allow for some good movement. Which is quite nice, and then you can rotate his head forward. It allows him to kind of get somewhat of a hunched look, which definitely helps with his bulkiness, which I definitely like. The shoulders, they rotate 360, they're pretty great, they're on a hinge, and like I've expressed with the shoulder joints, you can position them freely, so no matter what, even with his arm up, you can still get the shoulder joint basically flat against the shoulder there, so it doesn't look like there's gaps, which is nice, and keeps his shoulders bulky at all times, which is important, especially for War Machine. He has a ball jointed upper torso, which this is kind of nice, is that, he goes side to side, he can crunch forward quite far and back, and that's all without extending anything. That's very unusual. Usually there's just like a swivel here, and then to get any sort of the crunches or anything like that, you need to extend the body. So that's wonderful that he can do that without extending the body. If you do extend the body, you just get more range, which is great. Going down to the thigh area does have some collapsing panels that flip up right here, and then these flip up as well to get out of the way. Then the thighs themselves can move up about this far without extending them, and then if you extend the joint down, which they're very tight, and considering the legs are die-cast, they definitely need to be tight. So that's as far down as you can extend the thigh. You can kind of see the difference there between where the two thighs are positioned. Then he can kick up about that far, still not amazing, but still pretty good. He could kick up farther if these pieces would get out of the way even further, but unfortunately they do not. He has a double bend at the knees there, which work great, and then the ankles are very stiff until you pop them down, and it does take some force to bring them down, but once you do that, you can get an ankle rocker. So you can get, you know, a decent pivot there, and then of course a hinge at the ankle and a hinge at the toe. The hinge at the toe is very slight though. Moving it up, talking about the arms real fast. Other than the shoulders, when we get to the elbows of the arm, they work similar to the thigh or to the knees there. They're double hinge, but they are restricted. You get just about a full 90 degrees, maybe slightly more than 90, but not amazing. And then you have ball jointed wrists. They're just on a simple ball joint, not a ball hinge or anything. And you know, they have a decent amount of range for just a simple ball joint, which is nice. So overall, this Diecast War Machine Mark III figure is quite good. I do enjoy it a lot. I'm very happy to finally have a version of War Machine in my collection. I've kind of, you know, I've always wanted the Mark I, the plastic version when it was out, and when they finally released the Diecast Mark I, I was super excited, and then when they released the Diecast Mark III, I was even more excited as well. Went a long time struggling about which one to get. Finally decided to get the Mark III, and I am very happy with that decision. I think the Mark III looks great in my Avengers collection. I do always still have a soft spot in my heart for the Mark I. I think that it looks tremendous, but I think that the Mark III is kind of the best of both worlds as far as using aspects from the first War Machine, and then also modernizing it and making it a little bit more detail-oriented to fit in with the modern-day Avengers collection, which has kind of started to form with their, you know, the Iron Man marks get more detailed as the films go on, so this one does fit in nicely with that look, while the other one is great and bulky, but it has a lot of clean space on it, so it doesn't fit in that well. But overall, really do enjoy this figure. Again, I would prefer it to be plastic and just be cheaper, and going forward, that's how I would like the Iron Man figures to go. I'm starting to think that I may not pick up the Mark V anymore because of the fact that it's die-cast and just, you know, it's not worth the price tag to me. Even though I love the look of the Mark V, which is such a shame, you know, it would have been great if it was plastic. But this is a really nice figure. I'm very happy with it. It's really not lacking much at all. If anything, I think that the head sculpt's slightly weak, and I don't like the way that he holds the baton, but other than that, it's a really solid figure with great articulation, and probably better articulation than most Iron Man figures from Hot Toys, which is wonderful. So there, that's my video review of the Captain America Civil War War Machine die-cast figure from Hot Toys. Let me know what you guys think of it, and thanks for watching.